From the very beginning of the implementation of computers, as they were called, as that was what it was at the very beginning, from the very beginning when we started to use computers in classrooms, there was an ongoing discussion about how much time was too much time to be in front of a computer. Now, if you think about the fact that I began teaching, it's now 45 years ago, and let's say 35 years ago, I already had some, maybe 30 years ago, I already had some desktops in my classroom. Since that time, there have been arguments about how much time is enough time. And it's a legitimate argument. And I think it needs to be looked at from a rational point of view. We like to think of students as all having the same needs, but they don't. Yesterday or the day before, somebody was asking me about what age group I liked to teach the best. And my response then was the same as my response has always been. Every age group has its advantages and disadvantages. Young kids like to hold on to their teacher all the time. They crave the attention and the affection. Older kids have big problems. And when you have to interact with an older student, there are a whole different set of rules for how you do that. It's the same idea with the computer. Younger children demand more face to face, real time interaction with the classroom teacher, which by definition means that the time they're having to spend on computers right now because of the pandemic is going to harm them in the short run. I think that's important to remember. Children make leaps sometimes in their learning. They'll go only at one pace and then they'll take off because something clicks and they like what they're doing, and then they slow down. And right now, everybody's slowing down for all kinds of reasons. But that doesn't mean that good teaching won't make up for it. But the younger kids require more interaction with the classroom teacher. That doesn't have to be face to face all the time. You can interact with younger kids online just as easily, as long as you make sure it's one on one or a small group of students at a time. And then you give them an assignment. Older kids, the amount of time they need from the classroom teacher diminishes, and the more time they need online increases because of the demands of what it is they want to do and what it is you want them to do. There used to be in vogue a, a term called blended learning, which was really a combination of online computer time and in time seats in classrooms teaching. Blended learning meant some time away from the classroom and some time in the classroom. And blended learning is actually what is the best model to follow. But blended learning in the primary grades is not blended learning in the senior grades. It's the same as homework when you stop and think about it. Younger kids should spend more time playing and interacting with people and less time on a desktop and interacting with the screen or the TV. Older kids do more of their learning and their thinking by reading and by looking and by finding information. So, blended learning is the way it's going to go, but it's how we take advantage of that. I'm going to start with the example of a let's say a junior high school class, and they're learning something about, um, let's say, novel studies, and you want them to understand the idea of setting and mood and character development in a novel, let's say. So you talk to them and you give them examples, but you need to use things that they've already read. So you tell them in advance, I need you to read these things. And then we're going to have a discussion in class. That discussion in class doesn't have to be face to face anymore, it can be in Zoom. And because Zoom has a function for lifting up the hand, it can be a modulated conversation exactly the same as in a classroom. But then there's more work that they can do offline, except that the teacher has to be available to answer questions. When I was in the classroom and I was teaching graduate students, I was trying to get them to use the idea of WhatsApp or something like that, so that when they had a question, they posted it to WhatsApp, a group that I made up of all of the students in the class. And if I answered one question from one student, they all saw the answers. And if it was something they had the same question about, then they paid more attention. If it was something they had less need of, they could ignore it or just read it and then move on. When they're younger, learning takes so much more time, which means that you have to have the kids in the classroom. So much of what we do involves body language with younger kids and the responses in their head. You can see younger kids thinking. You can see younger kids reaching to create something or to accomplish something. You can't see that same thing with older kids. Recently, there was an article that I read, a link to an article that I picked up about the remote learning being here to stay. And it's very true, it is. As the speed, the connectivity gets greater, as we integrate more applications in learning and provide more opportunities for students to branch out and use the technology to do virtual experiments and virtual conversations with other people and interacting with people all over the world, that's going to be here to stay. That's an exciting opportunity for kids. In the classroom, remote learning will take less precedence with them because they need more one on one time or small group time. So when we think about going forward, we shouldn't be afraid and judge what's going to happen if the educators you're working with think about the importance of the needs, the developmental needs of younger kids, junior students, intermediate students, and senior students. And just as I said that intermediate students, there are advantages sometimes for students not being all together. When grade 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 students are together in groups, because they're more interested in each other from a social point of view That sometimes is better that they're not right beside one another. So when you judge things like online time, screen time, blended learning, don't use one brush for everything. Think about the different age groups and the different ages and stages of students and come to some conclusions and work that through. And always remember there's always positives and negatives no matter what choice we make.